All right, then, guys, today we're talking about who is going to replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. What does Lewis Hamilton's move mean for the whole grid? Will there be big changes? Let's have a look at some of the options at the moment. So, the realistic option, the one that everyone's really looking at and saying, is this just too obvious? Just Sainz step there as well. Obviously, Sainz didn't have the greatest stint when he was in Red Bull. Obviously, he left there, gone through different processes, and now he's ended up at Ferrari. There wasn't a real cry out for him to be replaced. If anything, Ferrari as a whole needed replacing. Some of their strategies last year absolutely screwed him out of races, screwed Leclerc out of races. They were a mess. But now, with Hamilton coming in, you expect a lot more changes going on as well. I can't imagine Hamilton looking at some of the decisions they made if he hasn't got a certain level of control, a certain level of things that he's going to change as well. Obviously, they got a no-poach contract with Mercedes, and I guess he can't approach them, but there's ways around everything. It's F1, it's political. We all know that as well. But who can replace him at Mercedes? Obviously, it's a massive void, and you think naturally George Russell will step up to be a number one driver. I think George Russell last year has shown a lot of frailties more than anything. I think he's shown a lot of prospect to start with, but then he started to make some mistakes. He started to get a bit like rash and decision-wise. Is he naturally a number one driver that you'd want there as well? And I got a little bit off him, I'll be honest with you. I think he's got a lot of talent, but he has a lot of problems where I think he feels sorry for himself, and I think he expects a lot to be given to him as well. I think same with that with Rosberg as well. I think great talent, but I think they need too much guidance at times where I don't think you got that with Hamilton. Hamilton was a natural kind of bit more raw talent. You get that with Verstappen, Leclerc, stuff like that as well. Lando even as well. Lando could potentially be somebody that they look at in the future and go, that's where we want to go. But the current way they're going with their car, I can't see it happening. McLaren seems to be flying. Obviously, just signed a new deal. So who will replace Hamilton? And I think the options are pretty much whittled down to three people at the moment. There's a few outside shouts for Albon to go. I don't see that happening personally as well. But if he has a great year in Williams this year, I guess it's a possibility. But from the way I'm looking at right now, I think your option number one, and this is in no order I think it's going to happen, I think Alonso taking that step there as well. I think if he deems that they're higher level than Aston Martin, but compared to last season, I don't really see the need to, but he may see they're taking some progress. He might take that as well, which I think is going to be the least likely option of these three. Number two, I think taking Sainz kind of makes sense a little bit as well. I know Sainz has got a lot of connections to obviously going towards a Sauber or state where it is as well, F1 team, going there and then making steps from there. Obviously going when they changed to Audi, obviously has connections at Audi, I think through his dad and so as well, so would make sense that way as well. But I think going to Mercedes I think is a good option for him, a bit more of a straight swap. Me personally, I would have done the swap this year. I know Mercedes probably built their car a lot around Hamilton. They don't do it as much as obviously Red Bull do towards Verstappen, but I think making the swap this year, I think they didn't intend to announce it all, but it would have made sense just to get it done now as well. Obviously, Mercedes want to milk the most out of Hamilton now as well in terms of brand-wise as well, so I see why they wouldn't. But it gives Sainz a year to try to settle into a team, and also a bit of an experiment. Does it work? Does it not? No distractions that way as well. Hamilton can go off to Ferrari and do what he's doing as well, and I think it takes away there. And I think it gives Sainz a fair chance to fight through. And I think maybe will Ricciardo take a step up to Red Bull next year? Perez goes. Perez steps away. Does Perez end up at Mercedes? I don't think that's really an option in my eyes as well. I think I see that like the Albon. A lot of the stars would have to align. And then does Sainz maybe go back to the Red Bull project? Does he just take that role next to Verstappen? I don't really know, but I think him going to Mercedes is a more likely option than Alonso, unless this option 3 comes in, which I think is probably the most likely option, but I'm not quite sure if it's time yet. And that one there would be Andrea Kimi Antonelli. And now he is a 17-year-old driver going through the Mercedes system as well. They're following him through and they've fast-tracked him to F1. It's to F2, sorry, as well. So he is now in F2 this year. And I think if he has a good season this year, he's won everywhere else he's been at. If he has a good season this year, he's kind of looking at taking that seat. And why wouldn't they take the gamble with him? They allow Russell to have a year or two growing as the lead driver. And let's be honest, taking in young drivers is or not always the bad thing. You see Verstappen, you see Hamilton, they can come in and step into these big roles and they can take the world by storm. And I think that's probably the more interesting one, but especially with them in limbo about where they're going to be at. If they're a title contending team, they might not want to take that risk. That's where I think they might then bring option 1 in, which was Alonso. Bring Alonso in for a year or 2 or Sainz. You might take option 1 or 2, bring them in for a year or 2 and try them out, see if, oh, actually, we can extend them a little bit, give him a little bit more time if he doesn't have a great season in F2, just to really hone his craft and get it all right, get it all ready, and then bring him up as well. Or do they try the Albon in for a year, someone that they feel like is in their system but they can get rid of at any kind of given time? Obviously, Alonso, we don't know how long he's got left. Sainz, I think if I'm Sainz, I'm looking for a longer term contract, somewhere where he can settle and grow with the car. I think he's earned the right for that as well, if I'm completely honest with you. I don't know where he'll go, but I think if Alonso moves to Mercedes, I think he could take that role at Aston Martin. If I'm him, I am taking that role at Audi. I know it's the easy option for him right now as well. I'm just basically holding out for that Audi deal really and go through with them as well, because I think that just makes sense. I think Mercedes have got backed into a corner here where I don't think they have a plan. But I think obviously Antonelli is a young one. I think he's a project they can work with as well, and they can build a car around his abilities. If his abilities show through F2 that he is progressing at that rate as well, it worked for Verstappen, so Red Bull did it. Why not try it out? There's a lot of things on here as well where I'm thinking, you know what is the best option to do? Who is worth the gamble? Is it worth trying out a young lad? I think it always is. I think it's always worth doing it. If you're good enough, you're old enough, is the old saying that's used through football a lot as well. You see it in all sorts of sports at the moment. These are 17, 18 and developing on like they used to when they were 22, 23 before. They're growing and they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. And I think take him on, give him a shot. If it's me personally, I'm letting Russell ride it out as the first main kind of option and see how this guy comes in. If this guy comes in and is ready to go, if he's getting it for the first year, then yeah, go for it. But having a second drive in a team the size of Mercedes, if they're semi-competitive, I think suits Russell to have a second support and gives this guy a chance to kind of settle down with no real pressure. As long as it's not the same design that Red Bull have with theirs, where they'll just dash them off, get rid of them and ruin the whole confidence. But that's a video for a different time, a different story. So for me, my 3 main options, I think Alonso, Sainz, Antonelli. I think one of them are going to be the options. One of them are going to be the one driving for Mercedes next year. I think the first 2 will potentially be used in a short-term one. If final one, Antonelli, if he doesn't get settled in of F2 this year as well. But I think he will, and I think he'll be in Mercedes next year, driving for them. And that's it for me. That is my final call on there as well. And I think as far as for Sainz, I think he's holding out for Audi at this point, and I think that'll be his safe move. And either or, I think he should be definitely in the F1 grid next year. Hopefully it all works out for them. You never like to see anyone lose their job or lose their spot on the grid, but a quality driver like Sainz deserves his spot. And I think Hamilton's kind of shook the grid up a little bit here. People are a bit uncomfortable with it, but it is what it is. We'll see how it all plays out. This is why we love F1. But make sure you like the video, comment down below anything that you've noticed about this deal, anything that you think that somebody needs discussing as well. We'll go through that as well. Subscribe to the channel, all the usual. And I'll see you in the next one.